Oops. Jai Guruji.
Jai Guruji, Auntie.
So I'm just going to get straight into it because we didn't finish the chapter. So just to read the last paragraph of this chapter, another imaginative version was that animal prayers to tiger heaven had achieved a response in the shape of Raja Begum. We talk about karma here because he had controlled so many tigers that now it was almost like the tigers were paying him back. He was to be the instrument to punish me. The audacious pipe, so insulting to the entire tiger species, a furless, fangless man daring to challenge a claw-armed, sturdy-limbed tiger. The concentrated venom of all humiliated tigers, the villagers declared, had gathered momentum sufficient to operate hidden claws and bring about the fall of the proud tiger tamer. My servant further apprised me that the prince was in his element as manager of the bout between man and beast. He had supervised the erection of a storm-proof pavilion designed to accommodate thousands. Its center held Raja Begum in an enormous iron cage, surrounded by an outer safety room. The captive emitted a ceaseless series of blood-curdling roars. He was fed sparingly to kindle a wrathful appetite. Perhaps the prince expected me to be the meal of the reward. Crowds from the city and suburbs bought tickets eagerly in response to the beat of drums announcing the unique contest. The day of battle saw hundreds turn away for lack of seats. Many men broke through the tent openings or crowded any space below the galleries. As the Tiger Swami's story approached a climax, my excitement mounted with it. Chandi also was raptly mute. Amidst piercing sound explosions from Raja Begum and the hubbub of the somewhat terrified crowd, I quietly made my appearance, scantily clad around the waist. I was otherwise unprotected by clothing. I opened the bolt on the door of the safety room and calmly locked it behind me. The tiger sensed blood. Leaping with the thunderous crash on his bars, he sent forth a fearsome welcome. The audience was hushed with pitiful fear. I seemed a meek lamb before the raging beast. In a trice, I was within the cage, but as I slammed the door, Raja Begum was headlong upon me. My right hand was desperately torn. Human blood, the greatest treat a tiger can know, fell in appalling streams. The prophecy of the saint seemed about to be fulfilled. I rallied instantly from the shock of the first serious injury I had ever received. Banishing the sight of my gory fingers by thrusting them beneath my waistcloth, I swung my left arm in a bone-cracking blow. The beast reeled back, swirled around the rear of the cage, and sprang forward convulsively. My famous fistic punishment rained on his head, but Raja Begum's taste of blood had acted like the maddening first sip of wine to a dipsomaniac long deprived. Punctuated by deafening roar, the brute's assaults grew in fury. My inadequate defense of only one hand left me vulnerable before claws and fangs, but I dealt out dazing retribution. Mutually ensanguined, we struggled as to the death. The cage was pandemonium as blood splashed in all directions and blasts of pain and lethal lust came from the bestial throat. Shoot him! Kill the tiger! Shrieks arose from the audience. So fast did man and beast move that a god's bullet went amiss. I mustered all my will force, bellowed fiercely, and landed a final conclusive blow. The tiger collapsed and lay quietly. Like a pussycat, I interjected. The Swami laughed in hearty appreciation, then continued the engrossing tale. Raja Begum has vanquished at last. His royal pride was further humbled. With my lacerated hands, I audaciously forced open his jaws. For a dramatic moment, I held my hand within the yawning death trap. I looked around for a chain, pulling one from a pile on the floor. I bound the tiger by his neck to the cage bars. In triumph, I moved toward the door. But that fiend incarnate, Raja Begum, had stamina worthy of his supposed demoniac origin. With an incredible lunge, he snapped the chain and leapt on my back. My shoulder fastened his claws. I fell violently. But in a trice, I had him pinned beneath me. Under merciless blows, the treacherous animal sank into semi-consciousness. This time, I secured him more carefully. Slowly, I left the cage. I found myself in a new uproar, this time one of delight. The crowd's cheer broke as though from a single gigantic throat. Disastrously mauled, I had yet fulfilled the 3 conditions of the fight: stunning the tiger, binding him with a chain, and leaving him without requiring assistance for myself. In addition, I had so drastically injured and frightened the aggressive beast that he had been content to overlook the opportune prize of my head in his mouth. After my wounds were treated, I was honored and garlanded. Hundreds of gold pieces showered at my feet. The whole city entered a holiday period. Endless discussions were heard on all sides about my victory over one of the largest and most savage tigers ever seen. Raja Begum was presented to me as promised, but I felt no elation. A spiritual change had entered my mind, my heart. It seemed that with my final exit from the cage, I had also closed the door on my worldly ambitions. How beautiful. So I feel that when that meher comes, then we do make that final exit from the cage of the worldly lures, and then we enter the door of our inner world, the spiritual world. A woeful period followed. For 6 months, I lay near death from blood poisoning. As soon as I was well enough to leave Kuch Bahar, I returned to my native town. I know now that my teacher is the holy man who gave the wise warning. I humbly made this confession to my father. Oh, if I could only find him. My longing was sincere, for one day the saint arrived unheralded. Enough of tiger taming, he spoke with calm assurance. Come with me, I will teach you to subdue the beasts of ignorance roaming in jungles of the human mind. You are used to an audience. Let it be a galaxy of angels entertained by your thrilling mastery of yoga. How lovely. So we are never alone. Even when we are on our spiritual quest, there are always angels and, of course, Guruji surrounding us. We are always being watched. And that is the moment when we start seeking within spiritually. That's when we actually drop our ego. And this is what he was advised to do, that instead of taming the tiger outside, now you tame the tiger within you. And that is our Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar. So it is all the vices that are within us. When they get tamed, and when we come out of the ignorance of the human jungle, and which is the human mind, then we are in a state of calmness and contentment. So let the galaxy of angels be entertained by your thrilling mastery of yoga. I was initiated into the spiritual path by my saintly guru. He opened my soul doors, rusty and resistant with long disuse. Hand in hand, we soon set out for my training in the Himalayas. Chandi and I bowed at the Swami's feet, grateful for his vivid outline of a life truly cyclonic. I felt amply repaid for the long probationary wait in the cold parlor. So now we head, because that was the concluding part of the last chapter. And that was beautiful because the realization came that he no longer needed to tame any tigers outside, but now his inner journey had begun. So the levitating saint, we are now on chapter 7. I saw a yogi remain in the air, several feet above the ground, last night at a group meeting. My friend Upendra Mohan Chaudhary spoke impressively. I gave him an enthusiastic smile. Perhaps I can guess his name. Was it Badri Mahashe of Upper Circular Road? Upendra nodded, a little crestfallen. Not to be a newsbearer. My inquisitiveness about saints was well known among my friends. They delighted in setting me on a fresh track. The yogi lives so close to my home that I often visit him. My words brought keen interest to Upendra's face, and I made a further confidence. I have seen him in remarkable feats. He was expertly mastered the various pranayams of the ancient eightfold yoga outlined by Patanjali. Once Bhadri Mashe performed the Bastrika pranayam before me with such amazing force that it seemed an actual storm had arisen in the room. Then he extinguished the thundering breath and remained motionless in a high state of superconsciousness. The aura of peace after the storm was vivid beyond forgetting. I heard that the saint never leaves his home. Upendra's tone was a trifle incredulous. Indeed, it is true. He has lived indoors for the past 20 years. He slightly relaxes his self-imposed rule at the times of our holy festivals, when he goes as far as his front sidewalk. The beggars gather there because Saint Baduri is known for his tender heart. How does he remain in the air, defying the law of gravity, the law of gravitation? A yogi's body loses its grossness after use of certain pranayams. Then it will levitate or hop about like a leaping frog. Even saints who do not practice a formal yoga have been known to levitate during a state of intense devotion to God. I would like to know more of this sage. Do you attend his evening meetings? Upendra's eyes were sparkling with curiosity. Yes, I go often. I am vastly entertained by the wit in his wisdom. Occasionally, my prolonged laughter mars the solemnity of his gatherings. The saint is not displeased, but his disciples look daggers. On my way home from school that afternoon, I passed Badri Mahashe's cloister and decided on a visit. The yogi was inaccessible to the general public. A lone disciple occupying the ground floor guarded his mastery's privacy. The student was something of a martinet. He now inquired formally if I had an engagement. His guru put in an appearance just in time to save me from summary ejection. Let Mukunda come when he will. The sage's eyes twinkled. The rule of seclusion is not for my own comfort, but for that of others. Worldly people do not like the candor which shatters their delusions. Saints are not only rare, but disconcerting. Even in scripture, they are often found embarrassing. I followed Baduri Mahashe to his austere quarters on the top floor, from which he seldom stirred. Masters often ignore the panorama of the world's ado, out of focus till centered in the ages. The contemporaries of a sage are not alone, those of the narrow present. Maharishi, you are the first yogi I've known who always stays indoors. God plants his saints sometimes in unexpected soil, lest we think we may reduce him to a rule. The sage locked his vibrant body in the lotus posture. In his 70s, he displayed no unpleasing signs of age or sedentary life. Stalwart and straight, he was ideal in every respect. His face was that of a rishi, as described in the ancient texts. Noble-headed, abundantly bearded, he always sat firmly upright, his eyes fixed on omnipresence. The saint and I entered the meditative state. After an hour, his gentle voice roused me. You go often into the silence, but have you developed anubhav? He was reminding me to love God more than meditation, Do not mistake the technique for the goal. He offered me some mangoes with that good-humored wit that I found so delightful in his grave nature. He remarked, people in general are more fond of jal yoga, union with food, than of dhyan yoga, union with God. His yogic pun affected me uproariously. What a laugh you have! An affectionate gleam came into his gaze. His own face was always serious, yet touched with an ecstatic smile. His large lotus eyes held a hidden divine laughter. Those letters come from far-off America. The sage indicated several thick envelopes on a table. I correspond with a few societies whose members are interested in yoga. They are discovering India anew, with a better sense of direction than Columbus. I am glad to help them. The knowledge of yoga is free to all who will receive, like the ungarnishable daylight. What rishis perceived as essential for human salvation need not be diluted for the West. Alike in soul, though diverse in out experience, neither West nor East will flourish if some form of disciplinary yoga be not practiced. The saint held me with his tranquil eyes. I did not realize that his speech was a veiled prophetic guidance. It is only now, as I write these words, that I understand the full meaning in the casual intimations he often gave me that someday I would carry India's teachings to America. Maharishi, I wish you would write a book on yoga for the benefit of the world. Maharishi, I am training disciples. They and their students will be living volumes, proof against the natural disintegration of time and the unnatural interpretations of the critics. Badri's wit put me into another gale of laughter. I remained alone with the yogi until his disciples arrived in the evening. Badri Mashe entered one of his inimitable discourses. Like a peaceful flood, he swept away the mental debris of his listeners, floating them Godward. His striking parables were expressed in a flawless Bengali. This evening, Bhadri expounded various philosophical points connected with the life of Mirabhai, a medieval Rajputani princess who abandoned her court life to seek the company of sadhus. One great sannyasi refused to receive her because she was a woman. Her reply brought him humbly to her feet. Tell the master, she had said, that I did not know there was any male in the universe save God. Are we all not females before him? A scriptural conception of the Lord as the only positive creative principle, his creation being naught but a passive maya. Mirabai composed many ecstatic songs, which are still treasured in India. And here I translate one of them. If by bathing daily God could be realized, sooner would I be a whale in the deep. If by eating roots and fruits he could be known, gladly would I choose the form of a goat. If I, counting of rosaries, uncovered him, I would say my prayers on mammoth beads. If bowing before stone images unveiled him, a flinty mountain I would humbly worship. If by drinking milk the Lord would be imbibed, many calves and children would know him. If abandoning one's wife would summon God, would not thousands be eunuchs? Mirabai knows that to find the divine love, the only dispensable is love. Like Guruji used to say, be God-loving, not God-fearing. Sirf apne Rab ko pyar karo. And that love is that chain that connects us to him. So just love him, converse with him, speak to him. And that is what deepens our connect and takes us deeper within the realms of our own spiritual landscape within. So several students put rupees in Baduri's slippers, which lay by his side as he sat in yoga posture. This respectful offering, customary in India, indicates that the disciple places his material goods at the Guru's feet. Grateful friends are only the Lord in disguise, looking after his own. Master, you are wonderful. A student taking his leave gazed ardently at the patriarchal sage. You have renounced riches and comforts to seek God and teacher's wisdom. It was well known that Badri Mahashe had forgotten great family wealth in his early childhood when single-mindedly he entered the yogic path. You are reversing the case. The saint's face held a mild rebuke. I have left a few paltry rupees, a few petty pleasures for a cosmic empire of endless bliss. How beautifully expressed that when we come to Guruji, we are actually leaving behind, although he said, Dunya vich ro, enjoy karo sab kuch, और फिर भी cosmic empire जो आपको मिल रहा है सबको, वो just head towards that. So we are not abandoning our material life or our ambitions or our aspirations, but we are, in effect, when we are gradually detaching from that through his meher, through his grace, we are walking towards the cosmic empire of endless bliss. How then have I denied myself anything? I know the joy of sharing the treasure. Is that a sacrifice? The short-sighted worldly folk are verily the real renunciates. They relinquish an unparalleled divine possession for a poor handful of earthly toys. So the divine possession, of course, once we come to Guruji's fold and we, sit with him in satsangs, we imbibe his energy. When our vibration lifts, then we understand that the handful of earthly toys has no meaning. Like he said, sab kuch yahi reh jana hai. Sirf naam ki kamai saath jani hai. So he gives us that naam ki kamai. He really enables us to imbibe the real deal, the real rus, as he used to say. And we become detached from the earthly toys. I chuckled over this paradoxical view of renunciation, one which puts the cap of croesus on any saintly beggar, whilst transforming all proud millionaires into unconscious martyrs. The divine order arranges our future more wisely than an insurance company. The master's concluding words were the realized creed of his faith. The world is full of uneasy believers in an outward security. Their bitter thoughts are like scars on their foreheads. The one who gave us air and milk from our first breath knows how to provide day by day for his devotees. So we are never in scarcity. And therefore, because we're living in abundance, because he gives us abundance, it's important to always be in gratitude. Guruji is taking care of us moment to moment, day by day. And he's taking care of us our future because he's already there in the future. So there's nothing to worry about. He's in our past, in our present, and in our future. And like he said, मैं form भी हूँ, formless भी हूँ. We किसी form में भी आ सकते हैं, Guruji, to help us in our hour of need. So Guruji's angels are also everywhere. So that is what we connect with. That is what is most enduring also. Not the outward ego and the worldly achievements, but actually dropping our ego and then having the angels and the good forces around us, which enable our spiritual evolvement. I can continued my after-school pilgrimages to the saint's door. With silent zeal, he aided me to attain Anubhav. One day, he moved to Ram Mohan Roy Road, away from the neighborhood of my Gurpur Road home. His loving disciples had built him a new hermitage known as Naginder Mat. Although it throws me ahead of my story by a number of years, I will recount here the last words given to me by Madhuri Mahashe. Shortly before I embarked for the West, I sought him out and humbly knelt for his farewell blessing. Son, go to America. Take the dignity of India for your shield. Victory is written on your brow. The noble distant people will well receive you. So if you remember, Guruji bhi apni sangat ko bhejte the east, west, north, south. And why he used to do that? Apni achhi sangat ko bhej dete the bahar. Kehte bahar jao, sangat jodo, satsang karo. So it's to spread the positivity. It is to allow people to move towards the light and to connect with him. And so that the universal vibration changes. Jai Guruji. Thank you. It was short and sweet. It was a two. Oh God, it's too short. 4:39. Sorry, I'm going to read one more if that's okay. No, thank you. We heard you. Yes. Is that okay, or are we done for today?
It's okay. We can read one more chapter if it's fine with you.
It was okay with everybody else? Okay. So chapter 8, India's great scientist, J.C. Bose. So Mr. Chandra Bose's wireless inventions antedated those of Marconi. Overhearing this provocative remark, I walked closer to a sidewalk group of professors engaged in scientific discussion. If my motive in joining them was a racial pride, I regret it. I cannot deny my keen interest in evidence that India can play a leading part in physics, and not metaphysics alone. What do you mean, sir? The professor obligingly explained. Bose was the first one to invent a wireless coherer, an instrument for indicating the refraction of electric waves. But the Indian scientist did not exploit his inventions commercially. He soon turned his attention from the inorganic to the organic world. His revolutionary discoveries as a plant physiologist are outpacing even his radical achievements as a physicist. I politely thanked my mentor. He added, the great scientist is one of my brother professors at Presidency College. I paid a visit the next day to the sage at his home, which was close to mine on Gurpur Road. I had long admired him from a respectful distance. The grave and retiring botanist greeted me graciously. He was handsome, robust man in his 50s, with thick hair, broad forehead, and the abstracted eyes of a dreamer. The precision in his tones revealed the lifelong scientific habit. I have recently returned from an expedition to scientific societies of the West. Their members exhibited intense interest in delicate instruments of my invention, which demonstrate the indivisible unity of all life. The Bose crescograph has the enormity of 10 million magnifications. The microscope enlarges only a few thousand times, yet it brought vital impetus to biological science. The crescograph opens incalculable vistas. You have done much, sir, to hasten the embrace of East and West in the impersonal arms of science. I was educated in Cambridge. How admirable is the Western method of submitting all theory to scrupulous experimental verification. That empirical procedure has gone hand in hand with the gift of introspection, which is my Eastern heritage. Together, they have enabled me to sunder the silences of natural realms long uncommunicative. The telltale charts of my crescograph are evidence for the most skeptical that plants have a sensitive nervous system and a varied emotional life. Love, hate, joy, fear, pleasure, pain, excitability, stupor, and countless appropriate responses to stimuli are as universal in plants as in animals. So true. So my elder daughter, she nurtures her plants like anything. Her entire home, apartment in Dubai, is actually filled with plants. And what she does is so interesting because she understands this concept that plants have emotions. So she plays the Om Namah Shivaya jap every evening. Every evening before going to bed, she plays the Om Namah Shivaya jap. And believe you me, I've been in Dubai now for 2 years. And this little plant over here, sapling, turned into a well-blossomed, well-bloomed plant within 6 to 8 months because of her nurturing and talking to the plant. How are you this morning? I'm just loving the plant. So love really conquers all, and love makes us blossom and even makes the plants and animals blossom. So love is the answer. Like God is love. So love is everything. So therefore it's love against resentment, hatred. And we need to really tamper all these emotions down for love to blossom. So we need to dilute them, the anger, resentment, bitterness, anything, even of our past, of our childhood issues. We need to let go because they are no longer relevant. What is relevant today is that we are all Guruji Sangat and we're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for that divine love. We're seeking the divine love. So that is what we need to nurture and make sure that is what blossoms within us. So the unique throb of life in all creation could seem only poetic imagery before your advent, Professor. A saint I once knew would never pluck flowers. Shall I rob the rosebush of its pride and beauty? Shall I cruelly affront its dignity by my rude divestment? His sympathetic words are verified literally through your discoveries. The poet is intimate with truth, while the scientist approaches awkwardly. Come someday to my laboratory and see the unequivocal testimony of the crescograph. Gratefully, I accepted the invitation and took my departure. I heard later that the botanist had left Presidency College and was planning to a research center in Calcutta. When the Bose Institute was opened, I attended the dedicatory services. Enthusiastic hundreds strolled over the precatory services. Enthusiastic hundreds strolled over the premises. I was charmed with the artistry and spiritual symbolism of the new home of science. Its front gate, I noticed, was a centuried relic from a distant shrine. Behind the lotus fountain, a sculptured female figure with a torch conveyed the Indian respect for woman as the immortal light bearer. The garden held a small temple consecrated to the noumenon beyond phenomena. Thought of the divine incorporeity was suggested by absence of any altar image. Bose's speech on this great occasion might have issued from the lips of one of the inspired ancient rishis. I dedicate today this institute as not merely a laboratory, but a temple. His reverent solemnity stole like an unseen cloak over the crowded auditorium. In the pursuit of my investigations, I was unconsciously led into the border region of physics and physiology. To my amazement, I found boundary lines vanishing and points of contact emerging between the realms of the living and the non-living. Inorganic matter was perceived as anything but inert. It was a thrill under the action of multitudinous forces. A universal reaction seemed to bring metal, plant, and animal under a common law. They all exhibited essentially the same phenomena of fatigue, depression, with possibilities of recovering and of exaltation, as well as the permanent irresponsiveness associated with death. Filled with awe at this stupendous generalization, there was great hope that I announced my results before the Royal Society. Results demonstrated by experiments. But the physiologists present advised me to confine myself to physical investigations, in which my success had been assured, rather than encroach on my preserves. I had unwittingly strayed into the domain of an unfamiliar caste system and so offended its etiquette. So an unconscious theological bias was also present, which confounds ignorance with faith. It is often forgotten that he who surrounded us with ever-evolving mystery of creation has also implanted in us the desire to question and understand. Through many years of miscomprehension, I came to know that the life of a devotee of science is inevitably filled with unending struggle. It is for him to cast his life as an ardent offering regarding gain and loss, success and failure as one. So this is where the duality is removed. In time, the leading scientific societies of the world accepted my theories and results and recognized the importance of the Indian contribution to science. Can anyone small or circumscribed ever satisfy the mind of India? By a continuous living tradition and a vital power of rejuvenance, this land has readjusted itself through unnumbered transformations. Indians have always risen, who, discarding the immediate and absorbing prize of the hour, have sought for the realization of the highest ideals in life, not through passive renunciation, but through active struggle. The weakling who has refused the conflict, acquiring nothing, has had nothing to renounce. He alone, who had striven and won, can enrich the world by bestowing the fruits of his victorious experience. The work already carried out in the Bose laboratory on the response of matter and the unexpected revelations in plant life have opened out very extended regions of inquiry in physics, in physiology, in medicine, in agriculture, and even in psychology. Problems hitherto regarded as insoluble have now been brought within the sphere of experimental investigation. But high success is not to be obtained without rigid exactitude. Hence, the long battery of supersensitive instruments and apparatus of my design which stand before you today in their cases in the entrance hall. They tell you of the protracted efforts to get behind the deceptive seeming into the reality that remains unseen, of the continuous toil and persistence and resourcefulness called for to overcome human limitations. All creatures, all creative scientists know that the true laboratory is the mind, where behind illusions, they uncover the laws of truth. So all creative scientists know that the true laboratory is the mind. So this is actually, it's true. The human mind, even just not for scientists, but for us, the mind is creating, is generating and is degenerating ideas. We are our own enemies sometimes. The mind comes in the way, but the mind is a very powerful tool if used properly and with a focused attention. But if we use it to let it rule us, then it can make us dip, can make us spiral into many mental illnesses, depression or self-doubt, or, but it is his grace that we are today using our mind spectacularly with his grace. We are all creative beings. And now we understand that the mind can create and destroy. So it's a wonderful sentence to recall, that all creative scientists know that the true laboratory is in the mind. So good things are always created in the mind, where behind illusions, they uncover the laws of truth. The lectures given here will not be mere repetitions of secondhand knowledge. They will announce new discoveries, demonstrated for the first time in these halls. Through regular publication of the work of the Institute, these Indian contributions will reach the entire world. They will become public. They will become public property. No parents will ever be taken. No patents will ever be taken. The spirit of our national culture demands that we should forever be free from the desecration of utilizing knowledge only for personal gain. It is my further wish that the facilities of this institute be available, so far as possible, to workers from all countries. In this, I am attempting to carry on the traditions of my country. So far back as 25 centuries, India welcomed to its ancient universities at Nalanda and Taxila scholars from all parts of the world. Although science is neither of the East nor the West, but rather international in its universality, yet India is specially fitted to make great contributions. The burning Indian imagination, which can extort new order out of a mass of apparently contradictory facts, is held in check by the habit of concentration. This constraint confers the power to hold the mind to the pursuit of truth with an infinite patience. Tears stood in my eyes at the scientist's concluding words. Is patience not indeed a synonym of India, confounding time and the historians alike? I visited the research center again. Soon after the day of opening, the great botanist, mindful of his promise, took me to his quiet laboratory. I will attach the crescograph to this fern. The magnification is tremendous. If a snail's crow were enlarged in the same proportion, the creature would appear to be traveling like an express train. My gaze was fixed eagerly on the screen, which reflected the magnified fern shadow. Minute life movements were now clearly perceptible. The plant was growing very slowly before my fascinated eyes. The scientist touched the tip of the fern with a small metal bar. The developing pantomime came to an abrupt halt, resuming the eloquent rhythms as soon as the rod was withdrawn. You saw how any slight outside interference is detrimental to the sensitive tissues. Bose remarked, watch, I will now administer chloroform and then give an antidote. The effect of the chloroform discontinued all growth. The antidote was revivifying. The evolutionary gestures on the screen held me more rapidly than a movie plot. My companion, here in the role of a villain, thrust a sharp instrument through a part of the fern. Pain was indicated by spasmodic flutters. When he passed a razor partially through the stem, the shadow was violently agitated, then stilled itself with the final punctuation of death. By first chloroforming a huge tree, I achieved a successful transplantation. Usually such monarchs of the forest die very quickly after being moved. Jagadi smiled happily as he recounted the life-saving maneuver. Graphs of my delicate apparatus have proved that trees possess a circulatory system. Their sap movements correspond to the blood pressure of animal bodies. The ascent of sap is not explicable on the mechanical grounds ordinarily advanced, such as capillary attraction. The phenomena has been solved through the crescograph as the activity of living cells. Peristaltic waves issue from a cylindrical tube which extends down the tree and serves as an actual heart. The more deeply we perceive, the more striking becomes the evidence that a uniform plan links every form in manifold nature. The great scientist pointed to another Bose instrument. I will show you experiments on a piece of tin. The life force in metals respond adversely or beneficially to stimuli. Ink markings will register the various reactions. Deeply engrossed, I watched the graph which recorded the characteristic waves of atomic structure. When the professor applied chloroform to the tin, the vibratory writing stopped. They recommenced as the metal slowly regained its normal state. My companion dispensed a poisonous chemical, simultaneous with the quivering end of the tin. The needle dramatically wrote on the chart a death notice. Both instruments have demonstrated that metals, such as the steel used in scissors and machinery, are subject to fatigue and regain efficiency by periodic rest. The life pulse in metals is seriously harmed or even extinguished through the application of electric currents or heavy pressure. I looked around the room at the numerous inventions, eloquent testimony of a tireless ingenuity. So, it is lamentable that mass agricultural development is not speeded by fuller use of your marvelous mechanisms. Would it not be easily possible to employ some of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various types of fertilizers on plant growth? You are right. Countless uses of both instruments will be made by future generations. The scientist seldom knows contemporaneous. Is it time to give up? The scientist seldom knows contemporaneous reward. It is enough to possess the joy of creative service. With expressions of unreserved gratitude, I took my leave. Can the astonishing fertility of his genius ever be exhausted? I thought. No diminution came with the years. Inventing an intricate instrument, the resonant cardiograph, Bose then pursued extensive researches on innumerable Indian plants. An enormous unsuspected pharmacopoeia of useful drugs was revealed. The cardiograph is constructed with an unerring accuracy by which a 100th part of the second is indicated on a graph. Resonant records measure infinitesimal pulsations in plant, animal, and human structure. The great botanist predicted the use of his cardiograph will lead to vivisection on plants instead of animals. Side by side, recordings of the effects of a medicine given simultaneously to a plant and an animal have shown astounding unanimity in result. He pointed out everything in man has been foreshadowed in the plant. Experimentation on vegetation will contribute to lessening of human suffering. Years later, Bose's pioneer plant findings were substantiated by the scientists. Work done in 1938 at Columbia University was reported by the New York Times as follows. It has been determined within the past few years that when the nerves transmit messages between the brain and other parts of the body, tiny electrical impulses are being generated. These impulses have been measured by delicate galvanometers and magnified millions of times by modern amplifying apparatus. Until now, no satisfactory method had been found to study the passages of impulses along the nerve fibers in living animals or man because of the great speed with which these impulses travel. So the concluding part, the last paragraph in this, Doctors K.S. Cole and H.J. Curtis reported having discovered that the long single cells of the freshwater plant Nutella, used frequently in goldfish bowls, are virtually identical with those of single nerve fibers. Furthermore, they found that Nutella fibers, on being excited, propagate electrical waves that are similar in every way, except velocity, to those of the nerve fibers in animals and man. The electrical nerve impulses in the plant were found to be much slower than those in animals. This discovery was therefore seized upon by the Columbia workers as means for taking slow motion pictures of the passage of the electrical impulses in nerves. The Nutella plant thus may become a sort of Rosetta Stone for deciphering the closely guarded secrets close to the very borderland of mind and matter. The poet Rabindranath Tagore was a stalwart friend of India's idealistic scientist. To him, the sweet Bengali singer addressed the following lines. O hermit, call thou in the authentic words of that old hymn called Sama, rise, awake. Call to the man who boasts his shastric law from vain pedantic wranglings profitless. Call to that foolish braggart to come forth out on the face of nature, this broad earth. Send forth this call unto thy scholar band. Together round thy sacrifice of fire, let them all gather. So may our India, our ancient land, unto herself return. Oh, once again, return to steadfast work, to duty and devotion, to her trance of earnest meditation. Let her sit, once more unruffled, greedless, strifeless, pure. Oh, once again, upon her lofty seat and platform, teacher of all lands. So as we know, India is the richest in our teachers and our gurus, and it is the land, the mother earth, the mother, our Matra Bhumi, our motherland, is distressed right now. So we must learn to love her also. We must send out healing and loving vibes to her too. So Jai Guruji, thank you. I hope it wasn't too long. No, it's less than an hour. Jai Guruji. Question and answer. Thank you. Question and answers on Sunday. Right. What did Guruji say about therapy? What kind of therapy are we talking about here? Sorry, there's a question here. What did Guruji say about therapy? What kind of therapy are we speaking about? Can we just elaborate?
Hello.
Yeah, hi. What kind of therapy? Sorry, can you elaborate? Whoever wrote this?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about therapy, like psychological therapy.
You mean going to a psychiatrist? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, psychiatrist or a psychologist, anyone.
Anyone. So, see, this is a very complex question, but I'll be honest, there's no harm in it. Because if somebody's helping you to settle your mind, but not to get attached, just, I mean, after my divorce, I went to a counselor. a healer. And I had also engaged in many therapies, by the way. I learned Reiki, I learned pranic healing, I learned many other therapies, to be honest. But in the end, I realized, after learning and going here and there, I realized that Guruji is the greatest healer. But for that, we need patience. Like this chapter has actually said, patience is the greatest, I think, if I can put it this way, patience is the greatest wealth of India. We are very patient as a nation. We are very tolerant as a nation. So when we're patient with Guruji, in Guruji's fold, when we are there, because we're going through a karmic journey, things don't always happen the way we want them to happen. And then things always pop up with surprise. Maybe an illness, like I had an illness, and then another illness, then autoimmune disease. I mean, most of you have heard my satsang. So when Guruji left his body, we all felt orphaned. And I was going through my separation. I wasn't legally divorced, I was separated. And I didn't know whether there was a life after. So I'd gone to see a counselor. But then, going to the counselor and going to Guruji, I realized, hey, Guruji is much bigger than all this. And he's the one who's changing my destiny. And he's the one who's giving me strength. And then that prowess just came from within me, if you see what I mean. So there's no harm in going, because everything is an experience in life. Why deprive yourself of experience? And I also became a qualified hypnotherapist. But again, I withdrew as soon as I realized that, hey, because Guruji said, कि तुसी किसी दी negativity नहीं ले सकते, and he rewrites our destiny, he edits our lives. So, by being a therapist also, conversely, we are not strong enough to take on other people's negativity. So he didn't encourage it, but he didn't discourage it. Of course, it's profession, people's professions. But at the same time, going to one, no harm. But it's your own journey. So, by going and realizing that, hey, we have Guruji, an embodiment of, he's an embodiment of every healer under the sun. You understand?
Yes.
He is a healer.
Of course.
The divine healer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you got your message. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Jai Guruji. Thank you, everybody.